Alright, sup guys, Follow Winter here, and we are doing a deck profile on machinings. So, we're starting off with Little B. He's just a really easy machining unit to start with. You can put him into Soul and choose one of your rested rear guards and stand them. This is really essential when you're using stuff like Stag Beetle, where he brings out 2 units rested so you can stand them and make them useful for the turn. He's also really great with the worst machining destroyer, where you can leave him on field, ride Stag Beetle, stride, and since you brought up 2 units plus that one, the starter, all you need is one more rear guard on field to activate his ability, and then after you've already activated the destroyer, you can put the beetle in, or the B into Soul and stand one of your other units, and now have a usable grade 2 if you brought one out. So there's that. The trigger lineup is 4 of this Machining Firefly, which is a new machining unit. Its abilities on call, counterblast 1, and you need a machining, machining vanguard, sorry, and you stun one of your opponent's units. It's just really helpful in situations where you just need the extra stun, and this deck runs a lot of 12k attackers and stuff like that, so it's pretty easy to make this hit numbers. I'm running the other machining draw or crit triggers. That way, you have 8 and then 1 extra crit. I'm kind of doing this because it is a very aggressive deck. It tries to rush kind of early to put them in a kind of pressure situation. So it works out for the deck. It seems to work pretty well. I'm running 3 draw triggers. These 2 should be machinings, but for some reason I couldn't find them at the time, so I'm just running these. But you really want the machining draw triggers because this deck relies on using machining counterblasts, so it's really important. You're running the 4 machining heal triggers. You just want to run heals in most decks. And for grade 1s, we are running 4 of the new Perfect Guard unflipping units. These are really helpful because this deck uses counterblast quite often, so it allows you to unflip a lot and just make sure that you have the counterblast to keep stunning the Vanguard or applying pressure or any of the other ways you use counterblast in this deck. You can also try running the Paralyzed Madonna, but the only thing that does is protect you against the Cross and Laurel Dimension Police decks. So if you don't run into those that often, you don't really need a rundown because all it does is let you defend rear guards against attacks. I'm running 3 of the 10k attacker Black Soldiers. It's just really useful because once again you want to apply pressure as much as possible. These can attack on your opponent's grade 2, so these can still hit 10 against your 9s usually, so they'll still help you. I'm running 4 Caucus just because this is a fantastic back row unit, and you want to try having as many of these in back row as possible, especially behind Vanguard. When they're attacking, and you have a Vanguard with machining its name and this boosted it, this will stun whatever, or you can choose something and stun it on the field. This is just fantastic pressure that is free, and there's a lot of units that at least hit 10k, so you're going to be hitting for 16 or higher more often than not. Lastly, I run 3 of the Little Dorcas, which is a stride enabler. You stride a lot in this deck, so you want to try to have as many stride opportunities as possible. For the grade 2s, I run 4 of the Red Soldiers. They're 12k attackers. It's just very useful to run 11k and up attackers in this deck because it's very aggressive. So with that, this lets you hit numbers with pretty much any booster in this deck, including the crit triggers. I'm also running the Mantis. I'm running 4 of these. I would probably drop one for Mosquito Mark II, but for now I only had 4 of these and 3 of the Mosquito, so I'm running it like this, but it still works pretty well. This card becomes a 12k attacker for the turn if you have a Machining in Soul, and this includes on the Vanguard circle, so if you ride this on grade 2, you should have a Machining if you rode a Machining on grade 1, and this becomes a 12k for that turn on your Vanguard, which usually makes it hard for the opponent to guard it. This is a decent backup card, and on calls and stuff like that allows it to hit 12 to 15 if you use a little B. Lastly, you have the new Legion grade 2, the Mosquito Mark II, which is a really good card. In most cases, your opponent's going to have everything on the field rested. When they do, this card is a 11k attacker, and on hit, it allows you to stand one of your units, and it allows you to stun one of your opponent's units at the same time. And this is all free as long as everything's rested and it hits Vanguard. This means you can make attack extension plays and keep them from standing stuff, which means even on grade 2 early, or on grade 2 rides, this is deadly on rearguard. For grade 3s, we have 2 Stag Beetles. I would probably be running more of these, but these are hard to come by. But even at 2, as long as you can ride into this first, or even as your backup to try to make more field, it's really useful for this deck because of the stride units and how important they are, that you have a field. And this is how you get it without committing too hard and losing hand. It's on ride, you choose 2 Machinings from your soul, call them out rested, and this card gains the total power of the units called out. Usually you can make 16k columns with units they called out. If you do, this hits for 26, which is a stride number on your first grade 3 ride without actually striding. So if they're grade 2, you're attacking with what is basically a stride. The other backup is Machining War Sickle. This is just a decent limit break unit, which kind of works like Descendant. If you're at limit break and your opponent guards your attack, you can counterblast 2 and stun their Vanguard. This is just a decent pressure tactic, so late game, they're going to have problems trying to do this stuff, or trying to block it. So it's an easy way to keep them from applying pressure or guarding your attacks. Lastly, we have the Scorpion Mark II. This is the Legion pair. Honestly, this isn't really your ideal ride. You just want to have it be there in case you need to Legion, and if you need to put stuff back into your deck, because this deck normally doesn't last that long, that you're going to run into that problem, but in case you do, it lets you try to push for game and keep yourself from decking out. For the stride units, we have 3 Machining Destroyers. These are your go-to stride in most cases, just because it's a easy counterblast 1, stun your opponent's Vanguard, and stun another unit as long as you have 4 Machinings on field. That usually stops them in their tracks if they do not have a grade 3 in their hand, and that will probably win you the game if once they do, because they can't come back from that and they keep minusing because they have to draw and attack with rear guards and turn end. Next, I run 4 of the Stun Beetle. This is kind of the Diablo of the deck, where you don't need to go into this too often, but this is just a win condition card where if you think you can force them into letting this hit, this will potentially also win you the game, just because they can't really do anything and they can't even get out of riding because you skip their ride phase during their next turn. What I like to use this for is on the turn I know that they're going to have to no guard at 5 damage. I stride into this and make sure I have the counterblast, and this makes sure I guarantee the win, because if they hit a heal trigger, they're still unable to ride Vanguard, so they have 0 pressure or advantage, so they have to survive another attack even if they hit the heal trigger. Lastly, I run the Paraspear. I don't go into this too often, but there are turns where I don't have the 4 rearguards, and there's no reason to use Stun Beetle because there's nothing actually relevant, and it's my first stride. In that case, all I need is for them to have 3 units on their field, disrupts all of them, and I get to draw a card, and it gets +5, which means I apply pressure, so it's not a bad unit to go into. That's the entire deck, so if you guys have questions or comments, whatever, leave them in there, and we'll see you guys in the next video.